Greetings, comrades. We recorded a video yesterday, or we're live in this platform. We were talking about the rights of migrants, particularly those that are applying for Asylum documents. We spoke about the deportation. Then there are a number of comrades that posted their comments. We will not read through all the comments, but we think it's important that we respond to other questions that were raised, or other comments. We need to give clarity so that we all understand. Comrade Jeremiah Chilenge says, but there's no conflict in Zimbabwe. So Comrade Jeremiah Chilenge is asking why Zimbabweans and others, particularly Zimbabweans, are being granted Asylum documents because in his view there's no conflict in Zimbabwe. It is not about what you might call a war, which then guarantees one to be granted an Asylum document. It was the case which the South African government, or it was the position that the South African government was taking until 2002, when Zimbabweans were denied the right to apply for an Asylum document on the basis that there was no war. But it goes beyond a war for one to seek refuge in another country. We have seen the persecution of opposition members, civil society members, who hold different political view from those of the government. Hence, they then seek Asylum documents. So it is not only about the conflicts. Comrade Betty Mohobu always writes, and she says, which rights are you talking about? You left your rights in Zimbabwe, now you are slavering your people. Every person has rights, including prisoners. So migrants, when they are in South Africa, they have rights. They are protected by the South African Constitution. It's important that we read the South African Constitution. We read the United Nations Charter on Refugees and the other relevant literature, so that we understand that every migrant has rights. And this is why even if one is arrested for violating the law, that person has the rights, or the right to legal representation. So it is not a right that can be taken away from a person. Then Comrade Charlie says, he argues that there is the first safe country principle, meaning you cannot escape from Nigeria and jump all other safe countries to seek asylum in South Africa. You remember that the white paper on migration was seeking to address this very question, because as it stands now, a person from Ethiopia, from Nigeria, from DRC, they will go through other countries. When they are now at the South African border, they cannot be turned away. When they say they are seeking refuge, they cannot be turned away. Just like we have seen many people going to Europe. When they arrive, it doesn't matter how they got into the plane. They then arrive in the UK, they arrive in Ireland, they arrive in Germany. The moment they declare that they are asylum seekers, they cannot be returned back. So their application will have to be processed. So, of course, South Africa is discussing the first safe country. If other countries are not safe, because there is cooperation between countries, and we have said that in the context of the political leadership in Africa, Pan-Africanism means solidarity amongst the political elite, right? So if a person is wanted, say in Nigeria, for their political beliefs, they then jump to a neighboring country, and that country then arrests the person. They take back the person to Nigeria. They get persecuted. So, in the principle of the first safe country, what do we mean by safe country? Safe in terms of what? Because this person is running away from persecution, and if they realize that in the neighboring country might deport them back to first persecution, so they will go to a safer country. So they might jump other countries and end up landing to South Africa. And then he writes, Comrade Child says, South Africa may not refuse entry or return an individual to a country where or he she may have persecuted or a threat to his life. But first, you are by law required to prove that there's a really crisis in your country. What happens when a person applies for an asylum? This is what we were explaining yesterday, is that the asylum application itself is to protect you from being deported, while your case that you have made is being investigated. Because if I come to South Africa and say I'm running away from Zimbabwe from persecution, the first thing that I should get is a document called Section 22, which is an asylum document. So I put it in writing, or I get recorded, my issue gets recorded. So I must make a submission, and it's preferably a written submission. The authorities at the refugee center, they are going then to investigate whether my claim is valid or not. If it is not valid, I then get it declined, or my application gets declined. But I'm also given an opportunity to appeal. But if indeed my application is found to be correct, that indeed if I'm returned back, I'll be persecuted in my country of origin, I'm then granted what is called a refugee status. So I become an official refugee. Once you become a refugee, you then have the right to a refugee ID and a refugee passport. And this refugee passport you can use to travel to any other country other than your country of origin. So the comrade also speaks about, he says your first stop should be at the border with authorities. This is what normally happens. But in some cases, people do not, because some they will be running from their countries of origin without proper documents. Some they then do not declare themselves at the port of entry that they are running away from persecution. Because if you arrive in Musina, you need to declare yourself, right, that you are running away from persecution. But for one reason or another, a person then does not declare themselves. They then have to declare themselves when they've already arrived in South Africa. This is why I said the law says if a person says that they are in the process of applying for an asylum document, they should not be arrested. That's what it says, and unless if that law then changes. Then someone then writes, Comrade Mabena, can I ask a question? Is it possible for anyone from Zimbabwe to get into this program at his or her first time of being in waiting list for getting a Zimbabwe exemption permit? The Zimbabwe exemption permit was discontinued in 2011. In 2021, 31st December 2021. The announcement was made, as you will recall, on the 25th of November 2021. So there's no ZEP according to the announcement. What is then is happening is that the holders of Zimbabwe exemption permits must then move to other visas. Hence there's this application for waivers, whether Zimbabwe exemption or applying for waivers to move to other visas. So there's no provision for someone who was outside the special permits to to get into the ZEP as it were. Then we also spoke about if you are arrested that you pay a fine because your case goes to court. Because when you are arrested, and one comrade is raising this in the comments, you are taken to court. And it's true that within 48 hours you should be taken to court. But your issue, your case cannot be dealt with within the 48 hours. It is not possible in the South African legal system, right? Because you appear in court within 48 hours. You are not going on trial. Because the court now has to determine if indeed you are illegal in the country or not, right? So this is why you still have people that are in Lindela. This afternoon, someone was telling me that their brother or a neighbor is still in Sun City. They were sentenced to 1 year for being in the country illegally. They were sentenced for 1 month. I think, I said a month. It is now over 5 months. They are still held up with them. So in such a situation, you need to approach the Zimbabwe consulate. So if you have a relative that is in Sun City or in South African prison detained, you need to approach your consulate. Case of Zimbabwean consulate. If you are from Malawi or any other country, you need to approach your consulate, so that the person can then be transferred to the Lindela Repatriation Center, where you can then do, we discussed this, voluntary deportation. So the family can purchase a bus ticket or an air ticket for the person that is detained, so that they do not spend more time in detention. So it is possible. So if the person has been found guilty of an offense, that is to say, the court says they are in the country illegal, they are sentenced to a month in prison, they serve their term of office, they are sentenced, and then they are kept there because no one is being deported, the truck is not full, or for whatever reasons, you need to consult your country consulate so that they intervene. Then the family raises money for the person to be deported. And then Comrade Sheila Mhlanga is asking about a waiver, because there are people that when they were applying for waivers, someone was working, say, at ShopRite. You applied for a waiver, you were working at ShopRite. Your waiver came out, but you are now working for Engine Garage. You have left your previous job, you're working now for a different company. So what you need to do, you need to do an affidavit that you were granted a waiver under this company, but you have since changed the jobs. Because like we said, if you take it back for correction, it might take some time. But you can do an affidavit so that when you submit your your application for a general work visa, you then get assisted. And of course, Comrade Mzwandile Sakati is asking on what happens when a person is found to be illegal in Zimbabwe. I think sometime last year, we did discuss the Zimbabwean immigration laws. Indeed, there are refugees in Zimbabwe, there are asylum seekers in Zimbabwe. I was reading 2 weeks ago about I can't remember the number, whether it was 17,000 or so, but indeed there are refugees in Zimbabwe from other countries. So you do apply, like the law gives provision. If one is running away from their country of origin and they seek refuge in Zimbabwe, they should not be turned back. They should be processed. The Zimbabwean state must protect them against because if they are not protected, then they will be taken back to their country of origin, and they are going to be face consequences. Right. I think these are some of the points that were raised. Of course, so Comrade Sbanda says some people have been arrested inside the Home Affairs. Like we said, there is a refugee center, which is not the Home Affairs, which is different, right? So if you go, say, the Harrison Home Affairs, you get arrested there, depending on, because you are not applying for an Asylum document at Home Affairs. So if the officers want to arrest you, they can effect the arrest. You go through the same procedure, like we said, that people have rights. But if you are in the queue in Marabastad, Desmond Refugee Center, you are applying for an Asylum document. You then get arrested there. We are saying it is wrong. The law says a person that is applying for an Asylum document should not be arrested. But one person, as I conclude, wrote in our chat group. This person says their Asylum document expired in 2010. And this person was asking if they can renew that Asylum. And my simple question was, for 14 years, what have you been using? Because it cannot be correct to say 2010, when others in 2010 were granted an amnesty, to say you are using an Asylum document, return the Asylum document and apply for DZP. Which later ZSP, now ZEP, you did not apply for a permit, you did not renew your Asylum in 2010, and you want to renew it 14 years later. So the question is, for the past 14 years, how have you been living in South Africa? So certainly, if you go and produce, that's my view, and I think this is what they are going to do. If you go to Desmond Refugee Center and say, look, I used to have an Asylum document in 2010 for 14 years. I never renewed it. I want to renew it now. They are going to arrest you because you are not a new applicant, right? You have been living in the country undocumented because for one reason or another you did not renew your Asylum 14 years ago, and you want to present yourself now as a new applicant. It cannot be correct. So when we are saying you should not be arrested at the refugee center, we are talking of a new applicant, right? Because you have entered South Africa, you did not know, because you did not know the procedure on how to get protection. Your only concern was to save your life. You were running away, you entered South Africa. While inside South Africa, then you were told that no, you can actually get protection from the South African state, right? That might happen after 3 months, 6 months, or a year, or even 2 years. You then get information that you can apply for Asylum so that you are not deported. It is then that you go to Marabastad and say, I'm applying for Asylum document, and the reason why I took so long to apply, I didn't know. There's nothing wrong with when you have been ignorant, right? Because you can imagine someone in DRC, right? This person, they speak French. They know nothing about the South African law, right? But because there's conflict in their country, they are now running away. They cannot imagine to say, but I can go to, there's a place where I can apply for an Asylum. They don't know. So such individuals should not be arrested when they then say you are actually applying. They might not even say Asylum, but they will say you are running away, you are seeking protection from the South African state, and the only protection that can be granted is a document called Section 22, an Asylum document. Once that is processed and your claim is found to be valid, then you are granted a refugee status. And if you are a holder of a Section 22, you do not go back to your country of origin. So you cannot go and apply for an asylum now. In October, getting to end of October. Then on the 16th of December, you go back to Zimbabwe or to Mozambique for holidays. It cannot be correct. Then you come in January and you say, no, I've got an asylum. They will simply cancel your asylum, because when you have an asylum, you don't have to go back to your country of origin. Thank you so much. I see quite a number of you joined. Please keep the questions coming. We will try our level best to assist with information. Otherwise, goodbye.